everybody knows without question where the refutation, where the basis, the empirical basis for assessment stand. So if you are talking of Transparency International and then United Nations Office of Drugs and Crimes, where does the answer in terms of reputation, in terms of standing, in terms of universality of position stand? My answer is United Nations institutions are refuted to be the best institutions for international assessment of issues.
So this government does not rate in any way Transparency International?
The universal position of government, the universal position of United Nations Office speaks for the government. So as far as we are concerned, when you are talking of Transparency International and then you are now talking of United Nations Office on Drugs and Crimes, then the answer as far as we are concerned is in rating sense, the same way the Transparency International is rating institutions. If you rate the position of Transparency International as against that of United Nations Office, my answer is United Nations Office on Drugs and Crimes stands clear. And then if you are talking of the assessment as far as the West Africa or perhaps the African states are concerned, the fact that the government of President Muhammadu Buhari has been commended, and indeed his person has now been rated as the champion of anti-corruption, it now establishes a point that there is no basis, no foundation, no justiciable ground, and indeed no standing upon which the transparency report can stand.
So specifically for the benefit of our viewers who are watching it tonight, so that they can get you clearly, this government does not in any way reckon with Transparency International and its report.
International recon has been established by United Nations Office of Drugs and Crimes.
Because the reason why I'm asking, Nigeria is not the only country that is being assessed here. Almost 200 countries around the world have been assessed. Nigeria, before your government came into power, have been assessed. But now the report is saying Nigeria has dropped for the 5th consecutive time. The question is, Honorable Minister, when you attend international community, this Transparency International report keeps denting the image of the country. And when you say that you don't reckon with it based on your own assessment of it, it still keeps denting the image of the country. What do you do about that?
Well, the image of the country, as far as I'm concerned, within the context of Committee of Nations, within the context of international assessment or by institutions of refuge, is the fact that United Nations Office of Drugs and Crimes has established a point. And then if you are talking of assessment within the context of African nations, this is a Transparency International assessment that is saying Nigeria is coming down the ladder in terms of successes associated with it. But the African nations this time around coming together to now commend the government of President Muhammadu Buhari in terms of the fight against corruption. It establishes a point that at the point of international universality of assessment, we have indeed been acknowledged as doing wonderfully well by the United Nations Office of on Crimes and Drugs. And then within the context of the regional perception, here is a government that has now been commended. Here is the president that has now been commended in terms of it. And within the empirical consideration of it, this is a government that now came to power at a time when convictions record of an institution, one of the institutions, anti-corruption institution for that matter, has a record of 103 in a year. And then the government has recorded over 2,000 convictions within a year.
Because,
so it does not support.
Honorable Minister, if you look at it, we should look at it from some other prism. Mm-hmm. Now, how do you react then to some people who say, look, in fact, corruption under this government is even far-reaching, and when you ask for evidence, the people say, oh, it's just motion, a lot of motion without specific and actual movement.
Well, the movement, as far as the fight against corruption, is established by convictions. I think you can rightly believe or agree with me in that perception. So if you have a record of 103 at a point in 2014, 2015, and then you now have a record of over 2,000 in 2021, it goes without saying that the motion you are looking for in terms of the fight against corruption is there. So the logical conclusion arising therefrom is this government is doing wonderfully well in terms of attack, enforcement, prevention of corruption within the index of empirical available evidence that can visibly be seen. The empirical evidence is to the effect that we have recorded more convictions, investigations are ongoing, and then there are no restrictions or limit to the consideration in terms of investigation and prosecution of high-profile cases.
Let me ask
and
you about these
much more
cases
in terms of speed as far as the conclusion and determination of cases are concerned.
Let me ask you, I mean, you mentioned high-profile cases, but there are worries about the state of some of these, the status of some of these high-profile cases, because for some people would say, look, it's just a matter of there seems to be some delay mechanism. Just maybe people can forget about some of these high-profile cases. Can you give us status report on some of these high-profile cases and perhaps the reason why they are being delayed?
Well, in terms of delay, I think you can agree with me very well, and rightly so for that matter, that as far as this government is concerned, the idea of delay in prosecution of cases and their determination does not arise. Why? Because if you are looking at it from the perspectives of legislative framework, this is the government that is administering and indeed enforcing the provisions of our Administration of Criminal Justice Act, which allows for day in, day out prosecution of cases. And over and above that, in terms of volume and number of convictions recorded relating to high-profile cases, I wouldn't like to mention names, but you know very well those that are indeed convicted within the lifespan and context of this administration as it relates to high-profile convictions recorded. You know very well those that are standing trials within the context and lifespan of this government in terms of high-profile cases. So added over and above the investigations, prosecutions, and indeed the convictions of the 2,000 cases recorded, convictions recorded by EFCC in 2021, a lot of them are higher profile cases. So what are you talking about in terms of delay against the background of the fact that over 2,000 convictions are recorded within a year?
There are politically exposed cases. There are high profile cases. Let me draw out a few of them so that maybe you can respond to them specifically.
Yes.
The case of the former Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Mr. Babachi Lawa, what is the status of that case?
Is it presented before the court or is not?
It is presented before the court.
So when a matter is subjected and presented before the court for determination, whose responsibility is it in terms of speed and determination? My answer is a matter has been investigated, a matter has been presented before a court of law for prosecution, and the speed associated with it, against the background of the existing law, Administration of Criminal Justice Act, that allows for day in, day out, you cannot, by any stretch of imagination, place a blame associated with the conclusion and determination of that case on the doorstep of the executive.
So you blame the judiciary for it?
It is exclusively a judicial affair.
Are you trying to resolve some of these delays? Because it's part of what Nigeria, you have promised in your own time, that you will work on ensuring judicial reforms in our judicial system.
Yes, and we have brought in a lot of reforms within the context of speedy determination of cases. Among those that are brought to bear, that has indeed contributed to the successes we have recorded in terms of volume and number is the application, enforcement, and operation of Administration of Criminal Justice Act, among others. So we have taken steps in legislative sense by providing a legislative framework. We have taken steps in due diligence in the prosecution of cases, which has eventually resulted to multiple convictions within a span of a year. So against the background of the fact that we have provided the legislative framework, we have taken steps in diligent prosecution of cases, and we have indeed recorded successes in terms of multiplication of volume of convictions within a period of time. It is a clear pointer that we have indeed promised and eventually succeeded in delivering.
What about the case of Hush Puppy? Any update on that?
Well, as you rightly know, it is an issue that has both national and international dimensions. And in respect of the two, actions have been taken. Is a work in progress locally and internationally, and we are doing whatever it takes to ensure justice is done within the context of the law, regardless of the personalities involved. In
the work that the FBI is doing, the prosecution is it helping the Nigerian case? We are hearing and seeing a result on the side of the Americans. So why are we not seeing much on the side of on our side here?
You see, issues that has to do with criminality and the enforcement of laws associated with crimes and offenses may have local international coloration. But then in the case of Hush Puppy, as you rightly know, multiple jurisdictions are involved. The UAE, United Arab Emirates, America, and indeed Nigeria. So within the context of the International Committee of Nations as it relates to the prosecution of cases, the international community is indeed collaborating and providing the necessary supports for the purpose of ensuring that justice is done to the case with the, with the peculiarities of the matter taken into consideration. So what I'm saying in essence, that internationally and locally, all hands are on deck.
What about the Nigerian side of things? America is doing its own. We see that prosecution is going on in America. But in Nigeria, there are other allied matters, facts related to the issue in America.
Nigeria,
what is being done on Nigerian soil?
When criminality is involved, Nigeria and US, for example, naturally works together when there are elements of the offenses that have, that has taken place in the diverse jurisdictions. So Nigeria is indeed doing the needful by way of supporting what the America is doing for the purpose of ensuring that the cases are tried accordingly within the context of the American aspect of it. And then eventually, if there is need for local prosecution, nothing as well stops it. So what I'm saying, in essence, it is about the international collaboration, and then we are seeing the result of the international collaboration in ensuring that those that are alleged to have in one way or the other been, in one way or the other, operating in abuse of the position of the law are now brought to justice.
So there's nothing concrete on Hush Puppy from now?
No, there are a lot of things concrete in terms of joint investigation and in terms of considering
where are we outcome. Exactly on that?
Well, you see, as far as investigation is concerned, where we are now, it is about collaboration. And then we are collaborating both.
So there is no prosecution happening here in Nigeria
yet?
Not
immediately yet.
What about Haba Kyari, the police officer? That is linked to that matter.
Well, generally speaking, as I have stated earlier, it is about international collaboration. We are collaborating, we are working, and then it is work in progress.
But the Haba Kyari matter is not about collaboration. It's about the investigation that was instituted on Nigerians within the police, and also will link to your office.
But there are components of it. It is of international dimension. One thing I can tell you about
what's the outcome of the investigation from Nigerian side?
Well, there are a lot of issues that are ongoing, inclusive of the possibility of consideration for extradition and associated things. That is where the collaboration element of it comes into play, in respect of all the two cases.
So there's a possibility of extradition?
There could be a need or perhaps the possibility of making such requests, and they are looking into it.
Was there a request for extradition?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, the parties are discussing, the parties are collaborating, and then there are exchange of correspondence from the perspectives of investigation, from the perspectives of extradition and associated things.
Is a police officer found guilty from the investigation?
You can't find someone guilty. You can't find someone guilty, but perhaps the reasonable grounds for suspicion can be established, will translate to prosecution that will eventually translate.
Because the panel has a quasi-judicial role and function. So they could also, of course, find some kind of culpability in their investigation.
Prima facie case, that is what we are talking of, reasonable grounds for suspicion. Reasonable grounds for suspicion has been established, and that will eventually translate to the possibility of prosecution and eventual conviction, if indeed, at the end of the day, the one is adjudged guilty by a court of law.
So what is the position now? Extradition or prosecution?
The position now is there are prima facie grounds, reasonable grounds for suspicion that have been considered from the perspectives of prosecution, from the perspective of likely extradition if the need for so doing arises. That is what is unfolding in terms of international collaboration.
All right, Honorable Minister of Justice, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Abubakar Malami. Thank you so much, Honorable Minister, for your time tonight.
Thank you, Sheikh.
We're just talking about some high-profile cases. Another case in point is the case of the former EFCC chairman, Mr. Ibrahim Magu. It does look like the investigation happened, everything just went under, and nothing has been heard. What is the latest? As he returned to the police force, what can you tell us? What's the status report on that?
It's a work in progress, Sheikh.
So what does work in progress mean?
Well, naturally, when you are talking of a government, and particularly when issues are complex in terms of multiplicity, you may have a component that could be administrative. You may have a component that could have some criminal undertones in terms of perhaps maybe reasonable grounds for suspicion. And you may have components that could require additional investigation for the purpose of taking position. So these complexities naturally are not issues that you can take clear-cut position overnight. You allow institutions, because multiple institutions are involved. If you are a public officer, for example, and then there is an allegation against you of living above your means, the code of conduct may have a role to play. If criminality is involved in terms of an allegations of commission of a crime, certain criminal investigations either by the police or indeed the EFCC, ICPC could come into play. If you are talking about administrative issues as it relates to a police officer, perhaps the Police Service Commission may equally have a role to play. So with this kind of complexities associated with an issue of investigation, you must have to allow the agencies of government responsible for each and every item under consideration to now take necessary steps.
But Minister, we thought that has happened. How long does it take to deal with the case of one person? The report, we understand the presidency had gotten the report. The man has been replaced at the EFCC. Is he back in the service now? Do you know whether he's back in the service? Or what is his status right now?
Well, I think at a point what happened, he was placed on suspension and Mr. President has taken a decision to allow someone to act. So with that in mind, you understand, and the report having been received, it is only logical to consider allowing the other agencies of government that have one role or the other to play to do what they are supposed to do in terms of conclusion of the report for the purpose of arriving at a decisive position. And I think that is how much I can say as far as...
Because the reason why I'm asking this question is that there are a lot of inference that have been drawn into it, like a political undertone, persecution, a lot of things have been drawn. And so it would be good to know that a tone of finality has been drawn into this matter. That's why Nigerians will want to know tonight where that case has landed, or is it buried forever, or is it been concluded? Is there a note of finality? That's what Nigerians would like to know.
When you talk of the government of President Muhammadu Buhari, it's a government that has no reputational issues of reputation as far as political persecution is concerned. So the idea of perhaps an insinuation of political persecution does not arise, taking into consideration the fact that it is a government that is built on integrity, it is a government that is built on due process and allowing things to take their natural course devoid of impunity. So the idea of political persecution does not in the circumstances arise, but certainly out of caution to ensure due process, to ensure things are done within the context of the law and due process.
So you mean that there is investigation or prosecution? You've gone past investigation, is prosecution on the case of Magu?
So what I'm saying in essence is you allow the institutions that I have mentioned, among others, to do the needful in terms of arriving at finality before a final decision is taken, and that is what makes it work in progress, and they are indeed doing the needful as far as their respective statutory duties are concerned.
I have a long list of questions which I'd like to take you up on, so I'd like to take them quickly. Yes. The issue of the Ikoyi money, those dollars that were found in Ikoyi, where are they? What is the end point of those monies?
Well, honestly, I have to refer back to records to refresh my memory. But one thing I think you need to know is the fact that the issue was an issue that was indeed handled by an agency of the government. So I have not been, as of today, I wasn't expecting this question, so I have not taken my time to seek for clarifications for the purpose of briefing. So I'm not in a position to say clearly. But one thing that I want to state categorically and clearly, that any monies that are indeed forfeited to the federal government, final forfeiture, are indeed supposed to be part of the monies meant to service budget. So I'm not in a position to clearly say with precision as to whether such final forfeiture.
You know why we need to know some of the, I mean, because fine, these monies are Nigerian monies, right? One, two, Nigerians want to get closure into some of these issues because there are a lot of issues. Do you promise that you're going to get back as a matter of statement from your office so that we can know on that for those who are watching now, so that since you don't have the fact that we might be able to get a letter from your office?
Well, I assure you that, again, the background of the question presented and perhaps the desire of the Nigerians to know what the position is, I will certainly reserve that point for the later day in terms of giving a comprehensive and precise position. But one thing I think that needs to be stated categorically, that in our budget of 2020, 2021, 2022, we have a component of budget servicing that relates to the recovered assets. And if indeed there has been a final forfeiture order relating to that money, it means by implication that that money must have been applied to the servicing of the budget. But as I stated, I will certainly get clarifications, and perhaps maybe during our next interview.
Two quick ones, Minister.
Yes.
One is on the issue of the Abacha loot. What is the status update on that?
Well, the status of it, as you know very well, two major recoveries were made, or perhaps three. One, it was a recovery made from Switzerland in 2017, which monies were applied in social investment programs, which constituted a budget item in that year. And that was the money that was applied in the N-Power and the market women trader money and the associated public works support programs. And that money was effectively utilized for that purpose. And then another one, that was the money recovered in 2020, which was recovered from US, Island of Jersey, and indeed UK, which was around 311, which was applied in the three major projects by the understanding among the participating nations, which projects were Abuja, Kano, Lagos, Ibadan, and second Niger Bridge. And as you rightly know, these projects are indeed being executed with greater speed, to the extent that even the second Niger Bridge has indeed reached an advanced stage. So those monies were recovered, those monies were applied. And then additional money that was indeed recovered was over $70 million arising from Malabu, which was equally an offshoot of the Abacha loot, which was equally applied to this project. So what I'm trying to say, in essence, there were recoveries made, and then the monies were, by the parties' agreement, agreed to be applied to specific projects, and those money were fact of the budget, and then were indeed expended accordingly.
So we're expecting a large tranche, another tranche now?
Yes, we are working
on... When is that due?
Well, you see, in terms of international recoveries, you cannot be certain in time sense. But then we have reached advanced stage, and then mutual draft agreements have been exchanged and considered. Right. So we are looking at the possibility of having such money, additional money recovered in shortest possible time.
Quickly too, a former governor of Imo State, Rochas Okorocha, went to the president last week and reported the EFCC. He alleged political witch hunt against him on a matter he said was a settled case. You oversight over the EFCC. What's your reaction on that matter?
Well, you cannot stop anyone from making any allegation, either wild or indeed reasonable or out of context. But one thing I can tell you clearly, that it is not part of the agenda of this government to witch hunt. But then if there are grievances, there are allegations, they are naturally open for consideration, investigation, and looking into. So what I am saying, I cannot with precision now conclude by way of adjudging the allegation of His Excellency Rochas as to whether it is indeed witch hunting, political or otherwise. But one thing that I can clearly say, if there is an allegation, we have established a tradition of looking into it and then taking and doing the needful in terms of ensuring justice, fairness, and equity of it is now considered applied and position taken.
Does that also mean that your party will not spare even its own members and will not shield anybody, even if it's a member of the APC, no matter how highly placed they may be?
I think most of the people now being investigated, being presented and before the court include substantially accessible members of the APC. So that establishes a point that this is a government that takes steps regardless of who is involved in terms of ensuring that neither impunity, no corruption or associated underhand dealings are tolerated.
Quickly, we see in the realm of anti-corruption and the issue of bureau de change operators behind terror financing. The last time you said you're going to give specific names, but as of today, there is nothing. Is it the style of this government, or what is the reason behind not giving specifics?
Well, I do not agree with your conclusion or insinuation that there is nothing. It has, as I've stated earlier, it has always been a work in progress. And in terms of investigation, both local and otherwise, you know very well that it's not something that you can be categorical in time sense as to the time of conclusion. But one thing, reasonable grounds are traced, prima facie case seems to be established, proof of evidence will have to be developed, and then eventually prosecution will take place. So there is nothing that is hidden. As far as prosecution is concerned, it is traditionally a public prosecution. And again, the background is the fact that prosecutions, as far as Nigeria is concerned, are carried out in public. Nothing will be hidden, both in terms of names, associated facts and circumstances.
When will this be? If you say they're not hidden, it's been a while now. This is probably the third time, Minister, that you and I are having this conversation. And you said
it can be hidden
because Nigerians are agitated. They want to know, name names. Let us shame these people.
You see, in terms of prosecution, the truth of the matter is we have established a tradition of taking even the Boko Haram before the court of law, and they were prosecuted and convicted. So at the point of arraignment before the court, there has to be a party charged. And then with that, the idea of perhaps maybe having someone, hiding the identity of someone does not arise. But you cannot stop work being in progress, and you cannot, in the circumstances of investigation and prosecution, be preemptive of the situation.
Minister,
again, the background of the
you know the insinuation drawn to this. That the reason why you're not coming up with name is because your investigation is not watertight. That if you have your investigation and your evidence are watertight, you will be able to come up with names of the people behind. These are people who are financing the killings of Nigerians, innocent people who are killed in their homes, who are taken out of their communities and deserted, ransacked their communities. And you think that we don't need to know their names?
You need to know, you will know. That is the true position of things, and processes have been consummated in line with the dictates of the law, and necessary orders where the need for so doing of taking people to custody for the purpose of concluding the investigation have been obtained judicially. Nobody is being taken to custody arbitrarily, and then work is in progress, and I assure you,
when are we likely to get their names?
You will be happy with what we are doing as a government. Once in a couple of weeks, perhaps, these people are charged and arraigned before the court.
Because before the end of this month?
Well, certainly in a number of weeks, you will have something tangible and cogent from
who will be expecting, Honorable Minister? I trust that you will do it. If you say so, if you say that it will happen in a number of weeks.
When I gave you my commitment in terms of proscription of the bandits within a matter of hours, eventually the order was obtained and then gazetted accordingly. So I am a man of honor and not out of pride, but then when I make promises, I keep to them.
Okay. We expect that. Honorable Minister, let's look at the issue of the likes of Nnamdi Kanu and Sunday Igboho. For Sunday Igboho's matter, what is the latest on that?
Well, it is a matter being prosecuted at the, at a foreign country, and within the context of that prosecution, one thing that is apparent and visible is he has been taken to custody, and taken to custody on account of breaching laws applicable in a foreign nation, and with that in mind, he is being prosecuted.
So there is no effort in bringing him back home?
Well, we allow the law of a nation that was indeed breached to take its natural course, and then perhaps maybe thereafter bringing him back home after the conclusion of the trial over there for the purpose of facing the Nigerian law that was accordingly breached. So the position of things is we are not interfering in aborting the existing prosecution at the foreign land, taking into consideration that the laws that were alleged to have been breached were indeed the laws of the foreign nation.
So there's no possibility of a political solution into the matter?
Well, in terms of political solution, taking into consideration his standing trial in a foreign land, what political solution can we bring to bear in terms
Because the agitation is there. It may be standing trial, but the agitation, the same thing goes for Nnamdi Kanu.
Well,
any possibility of political resolution or intervention?
Not in terms of what he is standing trial for at the foreign nation. So perhaps maybe those considerations may be considered, or perhaps may be brought to bear when he is eventually brought back after the conclusion of the trial at the foreign nation.
What about Nnamdi Kanu? Is there still possibility?
You see, in terms of
political
prosecution, you cannot rule out any possibility. In terms of prosecution, the laws of the land naturally takes their natural course, and in our laws there are a lot of possibilities. But one thing I can tell you, as it is now, the law is taking its natural course.
All right. Let me take you to one thing that a lot of Nigerians will be expecting you, because the president has said that you advised him and that he's listened to you. The last time also, you did say that you've given your advisory to the president on the issue of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. The president rejected it perhaps based on your advisory and the chief officer of law officer of the land. But are you satisfied with what the National Assembly has done and transmitted to the president?
Well, in terms of satisfaction, honestly, it is premature for me to conclude. Taking into consideration, I can admit to you that the electoral bill was only received in my office this afternoon as I was preparing to come over for this engagement with Channels TV. So I have not taken steps to review the content and context of what has been presented for consideration of the president. So it is premature and preemptive for me at this moment now to arrive at any conclusion, taking into consideration that I have not gone through the documents to understand what it contains and then analyze them in accordance with the Constitution in accordance with the prevailing laws.
Well,
yes.
For someone who has been involved in political party activities, I seem to want to assume that you love democracy and you want the advancement of same.
And I have worked in advancement of democracy, that democratic system.
Are you optimistic about helping the president to pass what he says he wants to leave as legacy of good elections for Nigeria? If Nigerians are saying that they want the Electoral Act Amendment Bill, are you optimistic that this bill might get passed by the president?
Well, honestly, without reading through, I am not in a position to assess whether the bill indeed has factored the national and public interest as against selfish interest, among others, whether it is a bill that can pass the test of constitutionality and legality.
If you are not satisfied, you advise the president against it?
Certainly, if I'm not satisfied and if I am of the opinion that it is against the public interest, the national interest, and then against the dictates of democratic process, I will advise accordingly. But then one thing I can tell you, that we are all interested in leaving behind a legacy of a lasting democracy that indeed accommodates the collective interest of the Nigerian state and eventually advance the national interest, national development, and deepen the democratic process. So with these considerations associated with deepening democracy, with the considerations associated with the national and public interest, we will certainly do whatever it takes to move democracy to the next level.
Nigerians are watching and they are holding you to account some of the things that you're saying, Minister, but I want you to give Nigerians commitment. Look, there's a lot of effort, money that have been spent into this amendment. Can you tell Nigerians, look straight into the camera and say, look, Nigerians, I'm committed and I will advise the president, even if it's not on this note, because, it's a history to it that the president refused the last time. And there are fears that if you advise the president otherwise, it might go in the same manner. But are you giving the commitment tonight
let us
that there's an optimism about the passage?
Yes, let us refer to the position of the president as it relates to the previous bill that was passed. What is your assessment as to the reasonability or otherwise of the issues raised by the president with particular regard to the democratic process? As a person.
No, but if you say that...
Were you of the opinion that the opinion of the president, the position expressed by the president was justified or it wasn't?
Oh, it's not up to me. I'm just a journalist. So
yeah, as a journalist, you are a Nigerian and that is deeply interested in the working of the democratic process.
My role does not permit me to be able to make such judgments. But the reason why I'm asking you is a matter that has gotten a lot of Nigerians agitated. And I wanted you to give the commitment to Nigerians that you will do your best in ensuring a good passage of that bill.
My office, Shehu, is a constitutional office and fundamentally governed by the public interest. And when I talk of the public interest, I am talking of the interest of 200 Nigerians. I will be guided at all times with my oath of office associated with the public interest and not exclusive or perhaps the sentiment of the few.
Minister, we need to go.
Thank you.
But there's something hanging over your party and perhaps on the neck of this government, and it's the issue of restructuring. This government has said it wants to define its own way what restructuring means. And you've come out as a political party to say true federalism. The president has said true federalism is the way to go. This government is winding down. It's few months before you leave office. Would you say that you have properly restructured this country?
Well, in terms of restructuring, I think this government has provided sufficient support in defining the restructuring arrangement. Now, when you look at it from the point of restructuring associated with allowing and defining the functions of the organs of government, for example, we are living witnesses to the fact that constitutional amendment with particular regard to Section 121, Section 3 of the Constitution was effected. And by that amendment, the autonomy of the state legislature, the autonomy of the local government system were defined and established. So I think if there are things, if there is a government that has indeed supported the restructuring arrangement within the context of functionality of the organs of government, this government is one of those governments that have indeed supported.
So you have done your best in restructuring this country.
And we will continue to do our best.
What about the True Federalism report from the El-Rufai committee? Has that been jettisoned?
What is the context of such true federalism you are talking about? In what way, in what direction?
They submitted a report. The party
constituted and then suggested a true federalism. To what extent? Because you have to be specific as to the direction before I can give you a clear answer as to the federalism aspect of it.
But in summary, this government has done.
My wonderful viewers, for watching this video together with me from the beginning to the end. Like I said before, if you like what you see here, if you like what I do in this platform, as you have finished watching this video, please hit that red button that says subscribe and put on your notification bell to all notification. In that way, you'll be able to know when I upload a new video. Share my videos, leave your comments in the comment section constructively. Until I meet your way again in my next video, I still remain your Linda's TV show. Bye-bye.